Hello, you're watching Talking Europe. The EU's immediate response to the US-Israeli attack on Iran was similar to its initial reaction to the Trump administration's kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, monitoring the situation closely and staying in close contact with regional powers. In both cases, it's hard to escape the impression that the EU lacks hard power or is perhaps unwilling to use the levers that it does have. Some today are recalling a phrase said by a Belgian foreign minister in the 1990s about the EU being an economic giant but a political dwarf. And when it comes to Iran, we're also seeing divisions between EU member states similar to what we saw during the Gaza crisis. Well, for this episode, I'm joined by two MEPs from the European Parliament's Delegation for Relations with Iran. Hannah Neumann is a German Green MEP, and she is the chair of that delegation. Hello to you. And we're also here with Michalis Hadjipantelis, a Cypriot MEP from the European People's Party. Welcome to you as well. I'd like to start with you because obviously Cyprus has been directly affected with these drone attacks. What's the mood there, and what did you think of these Iranian assertions that these are actually false flag operations or provocations?
Listen, the mood in Cyprus is very good. We are very happy with the support we got from European Union countries. We have support from Greece, France. You've heard that Emmanuel Macron and the Prime Minister of Greece, Konstantinos Mitsotakis, visited Cyprus. We have support from Spain, Holland and England. So this is something that, to be honest, was not expected a few years ago. But this shows that Europe can give solidarity to small member states like Cyprus. I think the situation in Cyprus is very good. It's not, it's over exaggerated in the media.
So when people talk about maybe an invocation of the EU's collective defense clause, that's, you don't think that's going to happen?
I don't think this is at the table at the moment.
Okay. Hannah Neumann, just on the sort of big picture, how do you think the EU has handled this? Has it really risen to the occasion here?
I would say we are on the pathway to rise to the occasion. We have indeed seen, especially the first 1 or 2 days, a bit of a prism of responses to the escalation. But if I look at what de facto the messaging is right now, we are moving much closer, and there's quite a broad unity on, I mean, clearly saying everybody wants this regime, the Iranian regime, to be gone, and everybody really shows solidarity with the situation in the Gulf, where they are being attacked by the Iranians. It is quite clear that we need to work towards a de-escalation together with our partners in the Gulf, and everybody's reaching out to Trump, to the Israelis, to tell them, what is your goal, what is your strategy? And I think that you already mentioned that in the case of Cyprus, it is also crucial that we work together to increase European resilience to the high rising energy prices, but also, I mean, to the situation with the delivery chains and along the Strait of Hormuz.
We'll come back to energy. That's obviously a crucial concern for Europeans. But I want us to take a quick listen to EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who caused a bit of a stir with the following comments. Let's take a listen.
Europe can no longer be a custodian of the old world order. For a world that has gone and will not return. We will always defend and uphold the rules-based system that we helped to build with our allies. But we can no longer rely on it as the only way to defend our interests. We need to be prepared to project our power more assertively.
Michalis Hadjipantelis, obviously since then Ursula von der Leyen has kind of walked back those comments a bit in the Parliament, but originally those words were interpreted as her kind of tacitly supporting Donald Trump and Netanyahu's idea of might is right. You know, if I feel like bombing a country, I can do it, or kidnapping another leader. Do you think she's gone away from sort of supporting international law in a way?
Listen, I think we have to be careful because international law is international law. We have, all of us, we could not always have a leader that tried to impose its will to other countries. We understand what is happening in Iran, but it's a tight line. It's a tight line of that we have to be careful, because if all of us, we don't obey, let's say, international law and we don't follow, where is the limit? Where is the line? And where do we stop? And to be honest, I was very surprised because we can see a huge change at the moment of what is going on in the U.S. I have experienced what happened in the war in Iraq 20 years ago or more, where at the moment the U.S. president wanted to have the support of England. Without the support of England, didn't want to start the war. It had the support of the U.S. Parliament. Now we have a new leader in the U.S. that decides during the night and implements during the morning. And this is very dangerous, even though the Iranian regime is a regime that we all know what has been doing for many years and we want to get rid of. But at the other hand, international law, like I said, is international law.
Yeah, I'm sure you probably agree with that point about international law, but you've been very critical of the Iranian regime, of course. But then the Spanish position is perhaps the clearest in the EU. It says quite clearly the attack is illegal, and other EU member states don't seem to be saying that. Do you think other EU members should be more clear on that?
Frankly said, we are stuck in a dilemma, and my colleague beautifully described that. On the one hand, we have the Iranian regime. Everything they have done in the last 4 to 5 decades is against international law, and they have just slaughtered, massacred 50,000 in their own population in January, and these people have a right to be protected. There is also an international norm that says there's a responsibility to protect. At the same time, what the Israeli and the US are doing right now is also a violation of international law. And what we can sadly see in the Middle East right now is if there is such an erosion of international law from all sides, how fast this can lead to how big of an escalation. And that is why we should actually make sure that as the European Union, in the medium and long run, we find a way to reform and strengthen international institutions in a way that they can enforce international law again. Because this rule of the strongest will just make everyone arm themselves under the teeth, and then we will just have one war after another. I really don't want to go down that road.
Now, Hannah Neumann was talking about energy, which is, of course, a big concern for the EU, and the International Energy Agency is going to go into its reserve of oil supplies. Just some thoughts on that, Michalis Hadjipantela. Do you think Europe is ready for this shock that's coming then?
Listen, we have heard Ursula von der Leyen stated some plans in the parliament during her speech. We expect these plans to be implemented immediately because European Union citizens, they cannot afford another increase in prices, another increase in inflation. We have already experienced high inflation during the last 2-3 years. So the European Union, the European Commission must have a role to sustain this increase of prices as soon as possible.
Hannah Neumann, of course, we've seen how energy prices have boosted populist parties and populist rhetoric. Are you concerned now that there could be even more of a backlash on things like the Green Deal and net zero and so on?
Well, you see, that would actually be the wrong step to take, because the last time gasoline prices were as high as they are right now was after the Russian invasion into Ukraine, because we have been too dependent on Russia for gas and for oil, so on the fossils. We then tried to diversify, making ourselves dependent on the Gulf countries. Now we see that this is going to make us fragile again. And everybody, like the Commission, is already on the way to now make us dependent on the US when it comes to gas. Rather than just replacing one dependency with another, we should become energy independent by moving fastly to renewables. Europe will only be free to make its own decisions when we are fossil free. So that should clearly be the way forward.
Do you think the EU has a plan to deal with the different kinds of fallout, energy, migration, security, or is it just sort of...
No, I think there is a huge improvement in the last couple of years in Europe, because we can see a lot of steps going forward. We have seen measures for housing crisis. Who could have thought a few years ago that the European Union, the European Parliament would be dealing with housing crisis? So it's a matter of the will. If we have the will, I think we have the power to find solutions to all the issues and to all the problems of the European Union citizens. We have to be united first of all of us, all the members of the European Parliament. And regarding the Green Deal, we have to understand that sometimes the Green Deal is our way not to be dependent on oil and gas. So this is something, but at the same time, we have to be careful not to ruin our competitiveness. Again, I understand it's a trade-off, especially within my group, but we have to be careful. But the message I want to give is Europe is so strong that we can give solutions to any problems that is affecting the daily lives of all the European Union citizens.
Just to come back to Iran a bit more, on a final point, Hannah Neumann, how do you think the EU should support the Iranian people concretely in this situation now?
At the moment, I think the most crucial thing is to raise awareness about the situation in the countries. Prisoners, for example, are at high risk of executions. There is an internet blackout. We can do some things to circumvent this internet blackout. That would be some immediate relief. But we also have people, Iranians here in the European Union, they have their visas running out. They should be directly expired. We should give humanitarian visas to those that have been repressed by the regime that are in neighboring countries, which is a program we had in the European Union, but it has been stopped. And then, I mean, there is a huge gap. If there is even a plan from Trump and Netanyahu, it kind of stops with we bombed the regime, we bombed the military facilities, and then miraculously they hope for a democracy to appear. We know from the Middle East that it's not that easy. So I think making preparations for the day after, thinking about if there is a possibility for transition, how we can make sure this goes well and will lead to a prosperous, democratic, free Iran, is something we, as the European Union, have quite some experience in, and we should offer it to the Iranians.
We'll end on those thoughts. Thank you so much to both of you, Hannah Neumann and Michalis Hadjipantela. That's all for this edition of Talking Europe.